You know, when we think about big development projects, like new roads, hospitals, or irrigation systems, they're all about improving people's lives, right? But their real success, that really hinges on one simple question. Whose lives are we actually talking about? Because the answer isn't always what you think, and it all comes down to who's included in the plan from the get-go.
And that question, who benefits? Well, that's where we often find a project's biggest blind spot. It's a place where even the absolute best intentions can go sideways and lead to some pretty serious unintended consequences.
I mean, it seems like such an obvious question, doesn't it? Of course, everyone benefits. But let's really think about that. What if a new health clinic is built, but it's too far away and women have no way to get there? Do they benefit? Or what if a new, better farming technique is taught, but only the men in the community? Do those families really prosper? Yeah. It turns out who actually benefits is a whole lot more complicated than it looks on the surface.
And that is the absolute crux of the issue. Without deliberately planning for equality, a development project can actually make things worse. No joke. It can reinforce old, outdated biases, it can shut women out of new opportunities, and it can widen the very gaps we were trying to close in the first place. Good intentions are great, but they're just not enough. You need a game plan.
So, how do we fix this blind spot? How do we turn all those good intentions into genuinely fair results? Well, the answer lies in a playbook, a really practical tool designed to build fairness right into the DNA of a project from the very, very beginning.
And this is it. It's called the Harmonized Gender and Development Guidelines, or HGDG for short. This was developed in the Philippines. And let me tell you, this is not just some academic theory. It's a really comprehensive set of tools and checklists created by the government working with international partners, all to make sure that development projects actually deliver for everyone.
The playbook has three really clear goals. First, give everybody the same set of analytical tools so they're all on the same page, speaking the same language. Second, use those tools to actively push towards gender equality. And third, the ultimate goal here, to truly empower women through the very projects being built.
Okay, so how does this playbook actually work in the real world? Well, it all starts by asking a series of really critical, really targeted questions before a single shovel ever hits the dirt.
The heart of this whole thing is a process called gender analysis. Think of it like a diagnostic scan. You know, before a doctor can prescribe a solution, they have to fully understand the problem. This analysis does the same thing. It helps you see the invisible barriers and inequalities that already exist in a community. And that diagnosis, that's the foundation for everything that comes next.
All of this complex analysis really boils down to four incredibly powerful questions. So, for example, just imagine a new road is being planned to connect a village to a market. The planners have to ask, who actually does the farm work, and who traditionally goes to sell the goods? Who controls the family's money, or who owns the cart to even get to the market? Answering these questions uncovers the hidden dynamics of a community and helps make sure that new road benefits everyone, not just the people who already hold the power.
Okay, so the guidelines talk a lot about empowerment, which, let's be honest, can sometimes feel like a vague buzzword. But this playbook gets very, very specific about it. It defines empowerment not as just one thing, but as a journey, almost like climbing a ladder with very distinct and measurable steps.
So the journey starts on the first rung with welfare, making sure everyone's basic needs are met. Then you move up to access. Can women actually use the new water well or attend the training session? Next up is conscientization, which is a big word for a powerful idea. People start to question why things are the way they are. This leads to participation, where women aren't just asked their opinion, they are in the meetings making the decisions. And finally, you reach the top rung, control, where women and men have equal power to shape the project and its benefits.
Okay, so now we have a process for analysis and a super clear definition of success. But what stops this from just being another report that sits on a shelf and gathers dust? This is where the playbook really gets its teeth: accountability.
So you gotta wonder, right? Is this whole system just a series of friendly recommendations? Can a project planner just ignore it if they're in a rush? Well, the answer is what makes this entire system so incredibly effective.
It's as simple as that. Nope. Every single project proposal is put to the test and given a numerical score based on how well it brings these principles to life.
And the consequences are spelled out in black and white. If a project scores below a 4, it means gender considerations are basically invisible, and that proposal gets sent right back. It doesn't move forward, period. To get a clear pass, a project has to be gender sensitive, and for the ones that really knock it out of the park by being gender responsive, the planners are officially commended. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a requirement with real teeth.
Now, you might be thinking, this is all well and good for building roads or schools. But the scope of this playbook is massive. It covers nearly every single aspect of development you can imagine.
I mean, just look at this. The guidelines have specific, tailor-made checklists for an incredible range of sectors. We're talking about everything from farming and infrastructure to the justice system, microfinance, and even disaster response. Each checklist asks the right questions for that specific field, which makes this tool both incredibly powerful and super practical.
You know, this is so much more than just a clever piece of bureaucracy. When you really zoom out, you see that this playbook connects a very practical process to a much bigger, much more global idea about what development is really for.
This quote is actually featured right inside the guidelines. It comes from the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And it's really the philosophical soul of the whole thing. It says that you simply cannot have a fully developed country, a peaceful world, or true welfare for all of humanity without the full and equal participation of women. The playbook is the tool that makes that powerful principle a reality, one project at a time.
So in the end, this system of analysis and scoring and accountability, it proves that it's actually possible to design fairness right into our plans. It exists and it works, which, it leaves us with a much bigger question to chew on. What would our world look like if every major investment, every new program, everywhere, first had to pass a test for fairness?